The Buga sphere has been opened. For the first time in recorded history, its surface, once sealed beneath Colombia's jungle, was exposed to human eyes. And what came out wasn't dust or relics or silence. It was a signal, a vibration so precise it rattled through the cavern walls and into the teeth of every worker, matching nothing in nature, nothing in science, nothing on Earth. Under the floodlights, the sphere shimmered like liquid glass, its skin crawling with shifting patterns that etched and erased themselves in real time, like a language alive, rewriting itself as it breathed. Instruments probing deeper didn't find stone or metal, but lattice structures vibrating beyond the speed of light, as if the sphere wasn't built here at all, but somewhere else. And before we dive deeper into what experts found inside, make sure to like this video and subscribe, because what happens next will change everything we thought we knew. When the team advanced into the chamber, the air shifted. Temperatures dropped nearly 20 degrees in an instant, breath crystallizing mid-sentence. The walls themselves seemed to hum in sympathy with the sphere, low enough to be felt, more than heard, each vibration syncing with human heartbeats until every pulse in the cavern throbbed in unison. Some swore the shadows warped, stretching into shapes that didn't match their bodies. One worker collapsed without warning. Eyes rolled back, whispering fragments of words in a language no one could identify. And yet, when audio was replayed later, the whispers matched inscriptions buried on obsidian tablets half a world away in Mesopotamia. The deeper they dug, the stranger it became. Buried directly beneath the sphere was a ring of crystalline pillars, transparent and flawless, each one positioned at precise mathematical intervals. But these weren't inert. They resonated when touched, releasing tones that formed chords too perfect to be accidental, harmonies built on scales unknown to human music. When the tones overlapped, holographic forms appeared briefly in the chamber, towering figures draped in radiant veils, their outlines sharp and unmistakable. The apparitions lingered only seconds, but every camera caught them, indisputable images of beings that should not exist, standing in a circle as if guarding the sphere. The site was no longer just archaeology. It was theater, a performance preserved in stone and light for millennia, waiting to be replayed. And then came the shock no one could explain. Within the sphere itself, cracks began to glow, revealing a hollow interior. Probes lowered inside detected an atmosphere unlike Earth's, oxygen-rich, but infused with trace elements only found in meteorites. Floating within was something impossible, a second smaller orb, suspended in midair with no visible support. Unlike the outer shell, this core pulsed faintly, beating with a rhythm eerily close to a human heart. Every pulse sent ripples across the outer sphere, sinking the chamber, the walls, and even the researchers' own biological rhythms into a single, unified cadence. Instruments registered fluctuations identical to brainwave activity, alpha, beta, even REM patterns, as though the sphere itself was dreaming. And just as these revelations began to settle, another shock tore them open. Hidden under centuries of soil, magnetic surveys revealed a vast geometric pattern stretching miles beyond the monument itself. Long barrows, pits, wooden posts, all linked in a precise radial web, as though Stonehenge was the hub of an enormous prehistoric circuit board. But circuits are nothing without currents, and the land itself carried them. Just beyond the chalk plains, archaeologists uncovered what looked like scars in the earth, ancient trackways leading directly to the River Avon. When traced, they formed a ceremonial highway stretching miles. Along it, residue of torch fires and discarded offerings were unearthed. But the path didn't just lead to Stonehenge. It connected two colossal monuments, aligning perfectly with the midsummer sunrise and midwinter sunset, a ritual corridor designed to bridge the world of the living with the world of the dead. Every solstice, thousands may have marched in unison, their chants echoing between earth and sky, carrying fire and bone toward the stones. At the same time, the chamber where the sphere had been unearthed began to change. Mineral veins threaded through the stone walls, reconfigured overnight, their crystalline structures aligning into hexagonal grids. Geologists swore the rock itself had liquefied and reformed under conditions that should have required volcanic heat, yet no temperature spike was ever recorded. When mapped with LiDAR, the walls revealed a vast diagram of interconnected rings, identical to the double helix of DNA, but stretched outward, spiraling toward infinity. At the spiral's core sat the unmistakable silhouette of the Buga sphere, as if the chamber had been constructed as its exoskeleton, designed to amplify rather than contain it. And then the ground shifted. Seismic sensors buried deep beneath the site detected micro-tremors in a repeating sequence, not random quakes, but patterned pulses. The data translated into binary strings, zeros and ones etched into the earth itself. Computer scientists who decoded the message found a phrase hidden within. It begins with memory. No one could explain how a geological tremor could speak in human code, but the phrase resonated beyond language. Days later, the first test drill into the cavern floor struck something harder than granite, harder than diamond. Extracted samples revealed fragments of a material so compact that 1 cubic centimeter weighed as much as a small car. Under electron microscopes, its latticework looked eerily familiar, not alien, but nearly identical to the structures found in the neural pathways of the human brain. Across the world, other phenomena unfolded in parallel. Off the coast of Peru, fishing vessels reported columns of bioluminescent light rising from the ocean floor, aligned precisely to the sphere's coordinates. In Siberia, long-dormant methane craters erupted, releasing not gas, but thin metallic fibers that drifted upward like smoke. In Cairo, the Great Pyramid itself emitted an electromagnetic pulse at the exact frequency recorded in Colombia. These weren't coincidences. They were activations, signals that Earth's most ancient sites were waking in unison. The sphere had not just opened a door, it had turned the entire planet into a resonant body. The inner orb at the sphere's core was the most dangerous clue of all. Though sealed away, its energy had left a fingerprint on every instrument. Physicists discovered that its pulse mimicked the exact pattern of a human embryo at 21 days, the moment a heartbeat first forms. More chilling still, the data showed genetic markers embedded in the pulse, not random sequences, but recognizable fragments of mitochondrial DNA, matching samples across every human population on Earth. Somehow, impossibly, the sphere was broadcasting the blueprint of life itself, as if it contained the memory of our origins. When a second probe was lowered into the chamber weeks later, it returned with a sound that was neither mechanical nor geological. It was a voice, layered, distorted, but undeniably articulate. The tones echoed in multiple languages at once: Sumerian, Sanskrit, Latin, even modern English, all folded into a single, overlapping resonance. The translation was fractured, incomplete, but one phrase pierced through with haunting clarity: "We left it in you." For some, It was proof of contact, of inheritance, written into our cells. For others, it was a warning that whatever had built the sphere had not left Earth behind, but embedded themselves within us. The revelations cascaded faster now, impossible to contain. Within a secret laboratory, samples of the sphere's surface showed signs of replication. Shards that had flaked off during the opening were not inert. Under controlled conditions, they began knitting themselves back together, reforming microstructures identical to the original shell. Within days, one fragment had grown from a shard the size of a fingernail into a sphere nearly 4 inches across, pulsing faintly in rhythm with the original. Scientists tried to destroy it with lasers, acids, even extreme radiation, but every attempt only accelerated its growth. The conclusion was inescapable. The sphere was not an artifact. It was a seed, and the seed was spreading. Analysis of the electromagnetic wave, first triggered underground, revealed its frequency harmonized with human neural oscillations. Volunteers exposed to the signal reported vivid, hyper-real dreams, visions of landscapes no one recognized, skies with constellations unseen from Earth, and colossal towers of glass rising out of oceans that glowed with liquid fire. In some dreams, figures appeared, luminous, elongated forms, whispering equations too complex to grasp, yet remembered word for word upon waking. Some scientists dismissed it as mass hysteria, but when children across 3 continents reported the same symbols scrawled into their notebooks without instruction, dismissal was no longer possible. The signal wasn't only in the mind, it was crawling outward, into the world itself. Instruments detected a rising hum beneath the jungle floor, layered with harmonics that matched the Schumann resonance of Earth's atmosphere. The planet's natural heartbeat was being bent, tuned, rewritten in real time. And as the countdown ticked towards 0, the vibrations surged. The hum intensified until it could no longer be dismissed as sound. Buildings swayed, though no earthquake registered. Glass trembled in its frames, and human bones themselves carried the vibration. Hospitals reported sudden surges of patients whose hearts had slipped into perfect synchrony, every beat aligning with the frequency pouring from the earth. Pacemakers malfunctioned, not from failure, but from overcorrection, dragged into lockstep with an unseen conductor. Even those far from Colombia felt it. Entire cities paused, unaware of why, as though time itself had caught its breath. Satellites orbiting overhead picked up the signal next, not as radio interference, but as physical distortion. Tiny fluctuations rippled across their orbits, tugging them off course by microns at first, then millimeters, then entire trajectories. One weather satellite sent back an image no one could explain, a sphere-shaped shadow, blotting the upper atmosphere, invisible to the naked eye, but undeniable to infrared sensors. The shape matched the chamber's dimensions exactly, as though the Buga sphere was no longer confined underground, but beginning to project itself into the sky. Meanwhile, deep-sea sensors in the Mariana Trench recorded tremors that followed the same binary-coded pattern first detected beneath Colombia. But here, the pulses carried a different message, one that translated into prime numbers strung in impossible sequences. At the peak of the signal, long-dormant hydrothermal vents erupted, releasing not sulfur or steam, but perfect crystalline shards identical to those that formed the chamber walls. Oceanographers retrieved samples, and when scanned, they revealed embedded holograms, microscopic reliefs of star maps showing not our galaxy, but clusters billions of light-years away. The ocean itself was awakening as part of the same design. Then came the interference with time. Atomic clocks, the most precise instruments humanity possesses, began to drift, each one deviating by fractions of a second, but always in the same direction. The drift aligned with the pulse beneath the sphere, suggesting that time was not simply being measured differently, but physically bending in rhythm with the countdown. Observatories reported flashes in the sky that lasted less than a nanosecond, but registered as full constellations frozen mid-birth, like snapshots from a universe unfolding somewhere adjacent to ours. Time wasn't just moving forward anymore, it was folding, and in human consciousness, the effects multiplied. Test subjects exposed to recordings of the sphere's resonance began to speak in voices not their own. One whispered in flawless Akkadian, a language dead for over 2,000 years. Another described in detail the chemical composition of stars visible only from Andromeda. Perhaps most disturbing was the case of a 7-year-old child who, during sleep, recited the genetic sequence of an undiscovered microorganism, one later found beneath Antarctic ice. The resonance wasn't teaching, it was unlocking. Memories older than humanity were bleeding back through the cracks. As the countdown neared its midpoint, governments scrambled to control the narrative, but the phenomenon had already gone global. In South Africa, the ruins of Great Zimbabwe vibrated until stones, long buried, realigned into a spiral identical to the one etched in Colombia's cavern walls. In Mexico, the Pyramid of the Sun released a narrow beam of light at dawn that pierced the clouds and burned a perfect circle into the upper atmosphere. Thousands witnessed it, a geometric scar glowing above the valley for hours. And in Japan, Mount Fuji rumbled with harmonic overtones so precise they mimicked human choir notes as though the mountain itself had joined the chorus. At the same moment, the replicated shard kept under laboratory control crossed a threshold. Its pulse accelerated beyond measurable hertz, vibrating into ranges normally reserved for subatomic particles. Then, without warning, it split open. From within emerged a sphere even smaller, translucent and flawless. But this one carried patterns unmistakable as fingerprints. 5 of them, each perfectly human, pressed into its surface from the inside out. Forensic analysis proved they didn't belong to any living researcher. Instead, they matched skeletal remains unearthed decades earlier in a cave thousands of miles away. The seed wasn't only alive, it carried the imprints of the dead. The revelation triggered panic, but panic did nothing to slow the acceleration. Skies across the globe lit with auroras where they should not exist. Over the Sahara, over the Amazon, over the concrete heart of New York City. The lights carried more than beauty. Encoded in their waves were sequences of equations no computer had yet solved. Equations that mapped not physics as we know it, but dimensions beyond 3. Observers swore they could see shapes moving inside the auroras, towering silhouettes staring back, their forms bending in and out of existence. Some dismissed it as pareidolia, others felt the gaze was real, and then, as suddenly as it had begun, the hum dropped to silence. Instruments flatlined, auroras collapsed, skies cleared. But silence did not mean rest. Beneath the surface of every ocean, sensors confirmed a single, unified vibration, so deep it could not be heard, so vast it could only be measured in planetary resonance. The Earth itself had begun to hum, not as a passive body, but as if something vast had only just drawn its first breath. That breath became a roar. The resonance rolled beneath continents, vibrating through steel, glass, and bone. Seismographs went blind, their needles stuck at maximum deflection. In the skies above, flocks of birds scattered in spiral formations no species had ever flown before, as if choreographed by an invisible hand. Whales breached in unison across oceans, their calls amplified to deafening roars that traveled thousands of miles. Even tectonic plates shifted in rhythm, releasing tremors so precise they mapped out a global pattern of concentric circles. The planet wasn't trembling, it was answering. From orbit, astronauts aboard the ISS reported lights blooming beneath the oceans, massive concentric rings of bioluminescence spanning hundreds of kilometers. These weren't algae blooms. The rings were geometric, interlocked like gears, glowing brighter as the hum swelled. One astronaut claimed the formations looked like circuitry spread across the seas, as though the oceans themselves had become a motherboard, powering something vast. When the images leaked, analysts noticed a chilling symmetry. The glowing oceanic rings matched the neural activity patterns of the human brain during REM sleep. Earth was dreaming, and the dream was spreading. Deep inside the Buga chamber, the sealed sphere pulsed once more. Not with light, but with gravity. Instruments crashed as gravitational fields bent, causing objects to float, fall sideways, or hover in impossible stasis. A steel crowbar drifted weightless, then slammed upward against the cavern's ceiling. Time-lapse cameras caught dust motes orbiting each other in miniature solar systems. For 3 minutes, physics bent as though the chamber had rewritten its own laws, and in those 3 minutes, a shape emerged on the sphere's surface. A handprint, perfectly human, pressed from the inside as though someone, or something, was trying to push out. Meanwhile, across the globe, dormant megaliths began to stir. Stone pillars at Göbekli Tepe quivered until they sang like tuning forks. Moai statues on Easter Island rotated fractionally, aligning their gaze toward the exact coordinates of the Columbian chamber. And at Stonehenge, tourists scattered in terror when the great trilithons rumbled and shifted 3 inches east, the first movement in over 4,000 years. Archaeologists later overlaid the alignments, and the results stunned even the skeptics. Every monument pointed not at the sky, not at the chamber, but at each other, like a network reconnecting after millennia of silence. The atmosphere thickened with phenomena that science had no language for. Children born during the countdown exhibited impossible anomalies. Eyes reflecting constellations, fingerprints forming geometric spirals, heartbeats pulsing at frequencies identical to the spheres. In hospitals, newborns hummed in unison when placed near each other, their cries falling into harmonic chords. Across entire cities, people who had never met reported the same recurring dream, standing inside a vast chamber of light, their bodies weightless, their voices not their own. Psychologists called it mass hysteria. Linguists called it prophecy. None could explain why the dream ended with the same phrase whispered in billions of minds at once. You are the vessel. Then came the final breach. The countdown reached 0, but there was no explosion, no collapse. Instead, silence blanketed the globe so absolute that even the wind died. For 60 full seconds, nothing moved. Birds froze mid-flight. Waves halted mid-crest. Human breath itself seemed to pause. And then, light, blinding, radiant, but soundless, erupting from the Buga sphere and radiating outward across every ley line, every monument, every oceanic ring. Cities flickered dark as power grids overloaded. Yet above the blackout, new stars appeared, constellations unfurling where the sky had been empty. Astronomers confirmed what no one wanted to believe. These weren't new stars. They were reflections. The night sky had become a mirror, showing another Earth hanging above us. Continents shifted, oceans rearranged, cities glowing where no cities should be. In the chamber, the sphere's shell, dissolved into dust, leaving only the inner orb suspended in mid-air. It no longer pulsed like a heart. It pulsed like a beacon, casting shadows that stretched too far, bending against angles that should not exist. And within its glow, outlines began to form. Figures taller than human, faceless yet familiar, their movements impossibly synchronized. Cameras captured the moment they raised their hands, not in greeting, not in warning, but in perfect imitation of the human gesture pressed into the sphere's surface. A reflection, a rehearsal, a return. Around the world, every human heartbeat spiked in unison, every nerve lit with electricity, every thought hijacked by a single, blinding sensation, recognition. Not of something new, but of something remembered. A presence older than history itself, echoing not from the stars, but from inside us. The Buga sphere had never been an object, never been a relic, never been buried to be found. It had always been waiting to be unlocked. And now, it was.